Washington, D.C.
So, Mrs. Durham, why were you in Washington, D.C.?
So, as a member of the City Council, I attended what we call Congressional League of Cities. We are part of what we call the Nevada League of Cities, which is part of the National League of Cities, which is an organization that helps to educate, train, and promote city leaders so that they can be the most effective city leaders for their community. And so Congressional League of Cities is an opportunity for us to travel to Washington, D.C. for our conference and our learning.
What kind of things did you learn about at Congressional League of Cities?
So basically what we focused on was, again, what kind of things can we do to make our city better, but a lot of it was about how does our city recover from the pandemic. And so we have the CARES Act money that came out a little bit ago when things were shut down with COVID, and it helped with the recovery process. Right now we have ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan, which is another round of funding that was put out in place to help cities recover from the pandemic and rebuild and just get your communities back up and running. So we learned about the different funding and how it's being allocated. We learned about the different ways that the funding can be used to help your communities recover. We learned about bills that are going on in the legislature and how they will impact our communities, different laws that are being changed. There's just so much knowledge out there, but a lot of it focused on recovering from the pandemic, and then just with the new administration in office, we learned about their goals and their priorities and how those goals and priorities tie into our community and how we can partner with them to make sure that we can build the strongest cities possible.
What part of the conference do you think was the most valuable as far as benefiting the city?
Oh, I would probably say, so when you go to these conferences, they'll have like a general session where everybody is together, and they'll have a list of speakers that come. Some are motivational speakers, some are informational speakers. We heard from the President of the United States, we heard members from Congress. But in between the general sessions, they have what they call breakout sessions, and those are classes, again, that are informational in nature. And for me, I think the most beneficial and most learning occurred for me is in those breakout session classes. In particular, I learned more in depth about workforce development programs that are being put in place, have partnerships within the community and within the government to develop a stronger workforce in terms of getting those skilled trade. Like for instance, here in Wendover, we don't have electricians, we don't have an HVAC business, we don't have a plumbing business here. And so we learned about how can we partner with the community, with our colleges, and even with our local schools, our high schools, in developing a strong workforce so that we can fill those critical needs. And for me, that was probably the most important and informational and impactful for me.
What were some of the classes that you took, and what was your favorite?
So I took a class, as I mentioned, on workforce development. I also took a class on different laws that are being passed and how they will impact our communities. For instance, I learned about how cities are able to place taxes on an overall fee that, say, a cable company or a satellite company will charge to provide satellite TV or cable TV. And they're able to use that money to help sustain and maintain the infrastructure that is necessary for those services to be brought into the community. But one thing that we learned is that there is currently a law that possibly will allow for taxation of streaming services, because right now streaming services use the same exact infrastructure as cable TV and satellite TVs, but there is no tax or fee associated with it. And so it's almost as if that streaming service is getting a free ride on the infrastructure. And so this will be a way that cities can increase their revenue to make sure that they have the highest quality and most up-to-date infrastructure in their community, so that the community members can get the highest quality bang for their buck, at not the expense of the city, but more at the expense of the entity that is providing the service.
What speakers did you hear from, and what was their message?
Well, we heard from a lot of great speakers, probably, regardless of your political affiliations. For me, it was the President of the United States. I was 7 rows away from the President of the United States. And when you stop and think about just what that represents in the office of the President of the United States, one of the highest offices in the land, to think that me, from little old West Wendover, was in the same room as the President of the United States was a very humbling and honoring experience for me. We also heard from different members of Congress. We heard from various mayors. I know that there was one point where we actually heard from the mayor of Lviv, Ukraine, as he reached out to us to let us know what was going on in Ukraine, what was going on in his community, and as you know, this war that's going on in Ukraine, and how much Ukraine is looking to its allies and partners around the world to help stand up and defend and protect democracy. And so to hear him reach out to us and talk about what we can be doing here in America to help Ukraine was very powerful, very emotional. And then we also heard from a former Green Beret who spoke, and it was more of a motivational speech, but it was also a very powerful story. And I'll just share a little bit about it. But the 3 most impactful things that he talked about, and you can apply it both as a city, a country, right down to just being an individual person. He said three things to think about is, number 1, own your story. Number 2, share your scars. And number 3, build relationship like your life depends on it. And I obviously don't have time, or could I do his message justice in repeating the whole thing, but to break down each one of those items. Own your story, or own your life, was about each one of us have been created and each one of us has a purpose. And what we need to do is take that gift that we have been given and make the absolute most out of it that we can. Always have a purpose. Always have a goal in mind, and always be working towards that goal. That is true at a city level. Why is your city here? What is the purpose? How can you best serve your community? Always have goals as a city that you're working towards to make your city better. But you can take that on a personal level too, that I as an individual have this gift of life, and I need to be maximizing it, my purpose, by setting goals. Even if they're small goals, each day get up and try to have a sense of purpose for what is it I want to do today, what is it I want to achieve, what is it I'm working for. Share your scars was just a really powerful story, and again, I wish I had more time to go into it. But he talked about how oftentimes, especially with social media, we get on there and so much of what we see is people, and it's okay, it's not that it's bad, but we see so much of the bragging that's going on that, look at me here, look at me there, look at my dinner, look at this, look at my perfect this, look at my perfect that. And sometimes what people need to know is that it's great to see people's successes, but sometimes it's more important to be able to understand that in those moments when we're struggling, and we know especially in these last few years, all of us have been struggling. He talked about that it's important to know that we're not alone in our struggles. And he shared a story about a moment that he had where he ran into an individual, and he could tell that this individual was down and was struggling struggling to maintain his sense of purpose and motivation to continue on to own his life. And he took that moment to share with him not his successes, but some struggles that he had gone through, his own personal scars. And it was in that moment that he was able to connect with that individual and actually save that individual's life because he shared his scar. And by sharing the scar, you let people know that you too are vulnerable, and it's okay to not be okay. There's other people out there that are struggling too, and you're not alone in this world, and it's okay if you're struggling. And you can find strength in hearing other people's stories and their struggles. And then the last part of it was to build relationships like your life depends on it. And with teaching is about relationships. That's why I've always advocated for more teachers in our building, is because the more adults kids have to work with, the more we increase their chances to be successful. Well, it's same with running a city. The more people that we partner with as a city, the more people that can help bring in the resources that we need. And you never know when your life will depend on it. And so for me, that was just a very powerful story and some 3 really good points for us to maybe take in and adopt for ourselves and maybe consider living by.
What was your favorite part of the conference?
Oh, wow. There was so many great things about the conference. I think the story that I just shared was probably the most powerful story and my favorite part. Seeing the President of the United States was pretty incredible. How many people can say that I was in the room with the President, Not that that makes me great or anything, but it's a pretty fun thing to be able to say. I think one of the fun things for me is always going up to the Capitol, up on the Hill, as we call it. It's called Hill Day, and that is when we get to meet with the congressional leadership. We get to meet with the senators. We get to meet with members of the House of Representatives, share our stories, let them know what it is that we need. And I think for me, when we went up to the Hill Day and we spoke with Senator Rosen's staff, she brought in members of her staff that were on the education committee. And as you guys know, education and fixing our school system is part of my passion. And so when I got home that night or back to our Airbnb and checked my email, I had actually gotten an email from Senator Rosen's staff asking if I would please come back and meet with their staff the next day. And so for me, that was just really, really exciting because, again, education is my passion. I want our kids, our country's children, to have the best possible education that we can have. And I really want to do whatever I can to make sure that we provide that. And that doesn't happen if you don't have the support and the backing and the funding from Congress. And so to be able to go and talk with people about the changes that I think that should be made and the funding that I think that we need, for me, that was really fun because it was like I was up there on the Hill, not fighting for me, but for fighting for the kids that I work with. And so for me, it's like, I did this for you guys.
Did you do anything fun while you were there?
Well, we got there early so that we could, we had some initial early meetings that some of us had to go there. So we went a little bit early before the conference started because we had these meetings to go to. But we were going to try to get some sightseeing in. And unfortunately, I got violently ill for the first couple of days. So the fun part really didn't happen until the day that we were getting ready to leave. But we did go and see Washington, D.C. at night and do some sightseeing. And I have been to Washington, D.C. 4 times now, but I've never gone out and seen the city at night. And that was a lot of fun because it is absolutely, the way they light up the monuments is absolutely beautiful. So that was a lot of fun. And then, some people like to go to basketball games and hang down by the gate to maybe see their favorite basketball player. And I like to go up on the hill and see if I can see any of my, the senators that I stand. And I actually ran into one of the senators that I have a lot of respect for, Senator Warnock from Georgia. And I actually ran into him and got to talk with him and have my picture taken with him, and we exchanged some pleasantries, and that was really fun. So.
Did you see any famous people there?
Senator Reverend Warnock. He, again, is one of my all-time favorite senators. He is a senator from Georgia, and like I said, we exchanged pleasantry. He was kind enough to let me take my picture with him, and we got to talk a little bit about a metaphor for how history should be taught, and it was fun. It was, yeah. Oh, and yeah. So, and I saw the President of the United States.
Yeah,
So that was kind of a pretty big deal. So, yeah.
Anything else you would like to add before I ask you some rapid fire questions?
I think it was just such a great trip, such a fun trip. I'm thankful that our city supports the National League of Cities and the Nevada League of Cities. You gotta love it, baby. Back to that question. The question, I just appreciate that the city and our community supports the National League of Cities and the Nevada League of Cities, because it's very important that the members that are elected to serve their community are educated, trained, and developed to the fullest extent, and they build the relationships not only with other leaders that are over the state of Nevada or over the United States, but that we collaborate with other city leaders around the country, because we are better together and we can learn from each other. And so I just really appreciate the partnership that we have, and hope that it continues to grow and get stronger, because it benefits our community.
All right, now time for some rapid fire questions.
All righty.
Are
let's
you
do it.
ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay.
Washington or Lincoln?
Lincoln.
White House or Capitol?
Capitol.
Senate or House of Representatives?
Senate.
Executive branch or judicial?
Judicial.
Memorials or museums?
Museums.
All right, and when it comes to politics, national, state, or local?
Definitely local. All politics are local. Be informed, be involved, participate.
Thank you, Mrs. Durham.
Well, thank you, ladies.